I know, so lovely to see you again. Hopefully, you're riding out the current shelter in place pretty well, and you are all stocked and entertained and safe. Anyway, here we go. We're going to be talking about something called modern philosophy. If you remember back to the last section, which I think most people will. We'll not call out any names who might not remember, but you know who you are. The last thing we did was Renaissance philosophy, and we think about the time period of the Renaissance. We're talking about beginnings, the seeds of the Renaissance in the 1300s, but of course more in the mid to late 1400s into the 1500s, the entirety of the 1500s, and then of course up through the English Renaissance was sort of the last gasp of that. The late 1500s, early 1600s. That's when Shakespeare was alive and writing, and some of his other contemporaries. Anyway, modern philosophy. So you think, oh yeah, we're totally going into something brand new, but no, it's not. It really, really isn't. It's modern in the sense that we're actually finally going to get away from the ancients. Not completely. That's pretty much never going to be a thing, but philosophy finds a reinvention. It's a renaissance of philosophy, not so much in getting rid of everything that came before, but inventing something new. People thought everything had already been done. It's sort of like what's going on in music these days. I think a lot of people do complain about like modern pop or rock music, like, oh, is there anything more to do? Is there anything more to say? And of course there is. It's just not a lot being done with it right now. So we're sort of in this interregnum period where there's not a lot of pop or rock invention going out there unless you're, in the know. But what's, the truly creative part of it is, in terms of music, is sort of similar in how the rise of modern philosophy goes. So when we use the term modern, we are actually talking about after the Renaissance, up through what's the Age of Enlightenment coming up on the next presentation following this. Of course, I'm breaking this up into parts. Although I'm going to go ahead and give you the scientific revolution first, which I did post a video for, and you can YouTube's all you want about that. Of course, it's something you've probably talked about in other classes, so I'm not going to belabor it a whole lot other than just giving you a quick rundown of what we have going on here. So, like I said, Renaissance, I think I did say it in that Renaissance presentation, that when we talk about Renaissance, Reformation, Age of Discovery, throw in the scientific revolution with that. It's all contemporaneous. All these great, magnificent, wonderful things for civilization are happening at the same time. But this is also a time of plague, and very similar to our own situation at the moment. So we can sort of find some solace with that. Even up through Isaac Newton. Some of you probably have seen some social media or memes about it. Isaac Newton himself had to sit out a plague, and that's sort of where he came up with his ideas about gravity. Anyway, 1473 to 1543. So Copernicus was a contemporary of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, those guys. Of course, we don't necessarily put them in the same pot, but they do. They live in the same time period. They very well may have written each other's letters at some point. Probably not. I don't think anything exists between them, but it's possible. Copernicus taught heliocentric cosmology for the first time since about Hypatia of Alexandria. So, yeah, big deal. So he's going to be helping to popularize that, although it kind of falls to the wayside because, we're getting out of that dark ages and we haven't fully turned the corner yet, because when Galileo comes along 20 years after Copernicus died, when he was born, he's going back to heliocentrism, but that doesn't really work out as well. So if you've watched the video about the scientific revolution, then you probably have heard this in other terms, and that's fine, but I do want to put some notes down for it as well. Okay, so who's Galileo? Galileo Galilei. He's Italian. He's an astronomer. He's known for observing the stars. He's looking at stellar parallax, as in movements. He's also looking at things like free fall, velocity, inertia. They did this in I think I remember doing this in like 8th grade science class or something. But when I'm going to drop a feather and I'm going to drop a bowling ball, and we'll see which one falls first. And of course, the bowling ball is like flat and the feather just sort of floats down. But on Mythbusters, they did it. They sucked all the air out of the room in a vacuum and then dropped both and let gravity do its thing. And then, in fact, both things fell at the same rate, proving Galileo correctly. That was not that kind of cough, I promise. Anyway, okay, we'll go ahead and... Galileo is such an interesting guy. Tycho Brahe, he was an astronomer as well, and he's known for having a fake nose. What happened to his nose? Long story, won't get into it here. Maybe the other video went into it. He saw that the moon orbited the Earth, but he thought the sun orbited the Earth. So he's not advocating heliocentrism. However, he does correctly observe stars and its movements, the movements of stars and planets. And he's also going back to this idea of believing simply in empirical, observable, verifiable data. Oh, how refreshing. And then lastly, we have this Johannes Kepler. Kepler was coming along. Of course, you see how these guys build on each other. Sadly, Galileo, I should at least mention this, Galileo was advocating the heliocentrism. The church made him recant, and he was under house arrest for most of his life and sort of smuggling out little pages of his works in the meantime. And he sort of took it all back so he could be given last rites and things like that. And eventually the Catholic Church sort of like, okay, we were wrong. Okay, so Kepler, back to Kepler. He proposes the laws of planetary motion. Yes, that's a thing. Study astronomy. Google it. He's also a mathematician. Obviously, that's what he would need to figure those things out. That's the tool he would have used. And he also invented a refracting telescope to help observe the stars. And if you are into any sort of astronomy at all, you probably have heard of the Kepler Telescope. It's one of those things like the Hubble that's helping us figure out the galaxy and the universe. And of course, we have the James Webb Telescope set to go up a year from now. I think it was actually supposed to be up already in orbit. They've had setbacks and delays, and I think there's going to be another delay after our current situation. So maybe a couple years from now we'll be talking about that James Webb Telescope in terms of celestial observation. Okay, so who's the first sort of modern philosopher we're going to talk about? A guy by the name of Michel de Montaigne. He's French, as you can see. He's born to a wealthy merchant family in a household where his father forbade anyone else from speaking anything other than lingua latina. Yeah, even the servants in this wealthy household had to speak in Latin. Bygone days. He's most famous for writing a book called The Essay, which I have over there somewhere. My philosophy books. And he invents a literary genre. So one of the classes I teach is composition, and I teach essays, how to write essays, and you would have to blame this guy. He's the one that sort of pioneers this new form of writing called the essay. Like even that word, you can see it from the French, literally, essays. So yeah, that's a thing, and this is why you have to do it and write papers and all your testing, whatever. They have to be essay form. Like even his, college, undergrad, senior year, writing lots and lots and lots of essays, and in grad school, writing lots and lots of essays. So there you have it. He is known for being witty. Sardonic is one of my favorite words. You should look up the etymology of the word sardonic. It's cool, but also deeply disturbing at the same time. It's sort of like, darkly humorous is what it means. He believed in casting down the institution of academia. He was not a big fan of everyone who just put everyone else down because they were smarter than everyone else. So probably good for him. I would, if we were actually together in class, I'd be talking a lot more about this. But, it's something you notice in terms of our current society. This is something, there's always a push and pull between the intelligentsia, academics, and the common person. And some of it's a shame. A lot of it is a shame. And he's right to point out the errors of superiority that academics have towards people. But also we have to look at academics, especially in times like these when we are truly relying on those who are more educated and experienced than us to do things that we simply cannot do. Like there's a reason why we have to put academia on a pedestal, because that's how we get better as a civilization, as a species, whatever. And I think Montaigne he definitely did say something along those lines, but I think he was just so tired of people just being full of themselves. Okay, he was a profound influence on Francis Bacon, an Englishman who I'll talk about, René Descartes, who we will definitely talk about, and Blaise Pascal, as well as Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a number of people after him. Of course, I have some students who do speak French fluently, and I apologize for my accent on that sometimes. I did not ever take French, although I've picked some up here and there. Okay, who else is this Michel de Montaigne? What else did he talk about in his essays? He's talking about personal relationships for education. The best way that you can learn from someone is by having forged a relationship with someone. And that doesn't mean anything weird. It just means like, hey, you learn from people that you know better than you learn from strangers. If you have an instructor who is more approachable, then your chances, this is according to him, if you have an instructor who is more approachable, then your chances of retaining information and using information are going to be exponentially better. He also says that people should learn by games and just having conversations, dialectic, style, and through meditation, which is a very novel idea, considering he's coming from the 16th, 17th century France. And he's not just saying you should go out and read books, but you definitely should go out and read books. Don't discount that at all. He uses the word just reading, so not just the one, but a variety of things. Okay. So essay. What does some of his essays say? He describes human existence, and he mentions its frailties and its shortcomings, and he's being very pre-existential, I guess. But he's also being funny about it, and he's trying to find some dignity in our sort of sad human state. He's also condemning academia as a religion, but he's sort of in the same breath condemning institutionalized religion. He's known for his family, he'd say these things, and he'd always finish this off sort of like a New York grandfather, but what do I know? But I don't know. What do I know? So that's kind of his thing. And then he saw marriage as necessary, but thought romantic love was a distraction to freedom. So you can sort of tell what sort of person he might have been. There's going to be a later existentialist philosopher who's going to say something quite similar to that. Okay, yeah, that is Michel de Montaigne. That is the scientific revolution that helps delineate from the Renaissance and get us going on this brand new path of modern philosophy. We'll pick up at Francis Bacon